Okay, we'll get started. We're going back to item 8. We'll have a next break at 5 o'clock, but it may well be that we can stop for a few minutes earlier when there's another motion, and if there's any opportunities come up, we'll just stop for 5 minutes while they're working on the motion, which just gives us a chance for a water break. The dinner will be at 6:30, and yeah, I think that's it. So we're going back to the open item 8. So Dave, can I let you talk through this and in detail and bring us up to speed? Sure.
What you just said about when we have breaks and everything, do we have to go till 8:30? I mean, we've got another 3 days. Can we not finish earlier and
No,
start?
I want to take it through and keep it moving. I don't want to run it at the other end we could run it at the other end, and so I just want to do full days until we get through it. Okay. So I don't want to start doing 6-hour days or 8-hour days and then find that at the other end we run out of days as well.
Okay.
So just keep it going while we're on a roll. Okay, so we'll take that as we take it firstly that Mark, are you withdrawing your motion, or James, are you okay with it? Yeah. Okay. So Dave, yours is going up as a motion.
Yeah, James is seconding it or something.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Can we please just very quickly, with show of hands, Chair, may I suggest you withdraw the previous motion so that we can put the new one on the table?
I just did. Okay, officially do you withdraw your motion? Yes. Thank you.
And everyone in favour?
All in favour, any against? Carried. Sorry, I didn't do the vote.
No, that's cool.
Sorry about that. Dave, can I just get you to talk to the concept so that we've just got a handle on it?
Sure. The concept is that we go back in our submission to the Ministry of Education, very specifically saying we put funding into the hall, we want some special consideration about the community being able to continue to use that and manage it, and there are people and organisations willing and able to do that. We're happy to effectively to broker that discussion, not to actually be the managers or owners or lessees of it, but to work on setting it up. So that's a bit of background as well as the resolution. The other part of that, the other first bit, is that we recognise and alert them to the fact there's another number of community organisations in the city, largish ones that are looking for larger facilities, and we're aware of that because of our work with Hinimoa Park and our other community development work, and that we want them specifically to be able to have an option to look at it and come up with a proposition for the ministry, and again we'd help with that. The third part is that we engage directly with the Minister of Education, the Council does, on the need to look past the normal ministry policy of getting rid of everything if it's deemed surplus to requirements, that it's not surplus. In other words, point out to the Minister this is not surplus to the community, our community's requirements. So we believe you should tell your officials to tie-ho while we sort out a deal going forward. And for the Minister would have to do that, to basically override the official process that's already got underway.
Thank you. Councillor Paula.
Just as per my question before the break, really keen to engage with the Ministry of Education in that wider conversation. I mean, sure, it is about Richmond School, but it's about understanding how they think they're going to deliver educational services to that.
Sorry, Paula, you're quite right. I did mean to, and perhaps we should put that in the second motion, the part B of the motion, in considering the future of Richmond Park School, including the wider educational needs of that part of the city.
Either that or in D, either whichever.
Yeah.
So just so long as we're going to have this broad conversation. Nice and early.
I meant in D, sorry.
Oh, did you mean D? Yep.
I don't know where, and what's actually see, sorry, at the end, because that's where it sits, talk to the minister about that.
Oh, so it'd be a comma, including ministries thinking for educational facilities in the south west of Hamilton.
You might
Would
need
that do, Dave?
box.
Dave,
Yeah.
your wording, just
Yeah.
for Becca?
Yeah. I mean, the staff will get the gist. We're not actually deciding what happens with it now. We're just deciding how we're going to introduce the conversation.
So including their strategic thinking in respect to educational facilities in the southwest of Hamilton.
Yeah.
It's very broad, right?
And that's basically saying you're going to need education facilities for Peacock suburb. Don't rule this out as
Yeah,
potentially filling some of that need.
And if they're getting rid of this, what else are they going to do? Because it's all part of the same debate, you know.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried. Go back to David and Sean.
Just to be clear on that one, there's no financial impact at all. The council, is it? Bit of work. Oh, other than a little bit of staff time to get the meetings of people in. Just a nod, that's all I want, just a nod.
Remember, we've got to come back to that.
Yes. No, Chris has been told to remind us to.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just before we sort of move into these next phases of the budget discussion, I just wanted to clarify the intent of the conversation earlier around the operating budget, and that I think elected members, what I heard was the elected members wanted to be able to question, discuss, debate, make a decision which wasn't necessarily binding, so that they could come back and change that if required. Am I correct in saying that? That was kind of the intention I took from that conversation. And can I check, does the same apply to then the renewals budget and the other aspects of the budget? Was that was I guess is what I'm inferring from that?
Could we perhaps look at each one individually? I mean, I guess the concern I had with F was that we were approving the draft operating budget, which to me was a kind of a locking in of the 15.5. It might be quite 15.5% that the Mayor has indicated as the rate increase. But when we get into renewals, I guess we may be quite comfortable to approve the level of renewals that you've budgeted for in terms of going forward with the draft operating budget.
So we could.
So it might be horses for courses, perhaps.
So we can change the recommendation in the operating budget to specifically state that this doesn't include rates increase, and that would address that point. I'm not sure that necessarily addresses the point that Councillor Dave made, which is we might want to go back and take reduce an activity based on subsequent decisions around proposals. So I guess I just want to make sure that we kind of get the I don't want us to make a resolution that we then feel that we need to revoke.
I think what Rob's saying, and I agree with him, is if we get to that stage and we're feeling comfortable, we'd like to assess it at the time, I think. Is that what you're saying, Rob?
Yeah, the word approves just worries me a little bit, because it means that, it's a fait accompli, we've made up our mind and approved it. I guess we want to reserve and particularly on something which is a rate increase, which is dependent on all of the other components of the budget.
Yep.
We may want to come back at the end and say, it needs to be 17 or it only needs to be 12 or something at the end. So I think locking in place, say 15.5 at this point.
So we're absolutely not locking in the rates increase in considering that operating budget recommendation, that motion. So if we just make it explicit in that it doesn't include the rates increase, that would satisfy the requirement, I think.
Two.
Yeah, so it already says that in effect. So if we understand the intent, if we understand the intent, we'll just sort of do some work. Sorry, between myself and Leanne and.
As long as you're not happy that if we come back and revisit it, we're not revoking an earlier decision. I guess you've mentioned the word revoking, And
Well, if I
I
could-
know how difficult it is to revoke a decision of the council in terms of our standing orders. So I'd want to be, personally, I'd want to be avoiding us feeling like we're revoking
Okay.
some decision that we've made earlier,
Cool.
which was interdependent on decisions that we still were left to make.
Okay, so if you're happy that we progress with the question and the debate on this, we'll work up the wording in the meantime, if that's agreeable to you, Mr. Mayor, Chair.
Okay, so let's move forward from here. What page are we on?
Okay, so if we be guided by page 8 of the agenda, which is really what we're doing, working through our recommendations, we're up to E. So under operating budget, this next segment is around approving the fees and charges schedule in section 2, attachment 12, and you'll find this on page 120 of your report, of your agenda. 120? Yeah. I'm open, but I think it's probably a sensible way of chunking this down.
So we're doing E separately from E?
Correct.
Just about the process here.
Name up there.
Okay. It's about the
Yes, go ahead.
process, not about the specific ones. Oh, I'll wait for you, Gary.
No, go ahead, please, Dave.
Is there information on the revenue gained from each of these? It's something that we used to have, so to save arguing over something, difference between $200 and $300 income a year, didn't mind arguing if it was 100,000 versus 200,000 revenue a year? That's what we used to get previously. We knew how, and we got hundreds of these here, but we, yeah.
I understand your point, Councillor Dave. In the report, I don't believe there is that level of detail. I'm just racking my brains on previous briefings where I think when we went through fees and charges, we denoted those that were material as opposed to immaterial. But
Yeah, but every time we asked it, we're told we would get our opportunity to debate that here. And some of the ones I want to raise, I wouldn't have a clue about, and I don't know whether staff here would have a clue about how much they brought in. I don't mean that offensively, there's so many of them, it's not possible.
maybe as a way forward, we can, if there are some items that you want that information on, given that a number of these recommendations are around the sum total at the end, we can bring that information back to you, go and calculate that and bring that back to you. Is that, let me just, is that possible?
Yeah. I guess when I saw this yesterday, this particular thing, it didn't, I realised that we were going to have it's absolutely meaningless debates because we don't know what effect, who knows what effect it's going to have on the budget. If you say, well, that fee of 200 should be $100, that...
But there's only one of them.
Yeah, there's only one of them, so it makes no difference to the budget, which is done in thousands, or are there 100,000 of them and it's going to make a $10 million difference. I mean, how is any debate going to be had on these without knowing that? Because you don't know what effect the result will have.
I think the answer is that David doesn't have that information now anyway, so there's nothing we can do about it. And maybe it's just something we get.
It was something you always had in the past that we knew.
But I don't think David's got that info.
We're just, we've got a staff member who we think knows what the overall, we'll find him, and maybe that'll answer your question too.
So the total increase is $3 million in terms of fees and charges.
Okay,
we
so
do have,
Increase or total
budget.
budget, so it's not an increase of...
No.
So we're not debating a particular building fee. How much will that affect? Do you know how much that'll affect the $3 million budget?
I guess the challenge here with the fees and charges is the screeds of information that's attached to it, right? And we could be here for a long time in terms of going through each individual fee increase. So I suppose the thinking was go through that in the briefing so that we could use a chunk of time, and then when we got to this stage in the deliberations, we'd have more of a sense around that.
Well, I don't recall the building fee for putting in a window, which happens to be one I want to discuss, on page 121 being raised at a meeting.
He's got a window to put
own property here.
We did
I'm the
have
only
a
one with no
briefing on this.
conflict of interest. So, look, sorry, I've identified a problem, but it's not solvable in the short run.
We did have a briefing, but we didn't go through line by line in that briefing. It was, the
When was the
doors,
briefing?
the opportunity was open for us to pick up things and ask questions on them.
Yeah, but we didn't have this list in front of us, so we didn't know to ask about specific fees.
We did.
Well, then I wasn't there.
Is there,
I mean, this is where
So
we
if there's
make
any,
decisions.
if there's any significant increase, they're either attached to a proposal, like the cemeteries or the pools, or there's a paragraph in here discussing that.
Well,
is there a list of fees you want us to go away and get some information on, Councillor Dave?
yeah, the whole lot. I mean, seriously,
Can I just help out? This is insurmountable because we don't have the information, so it can't be solved today. So any discussion about this is a bit moot. We do know that the total quantum's about 3 million. So we know that the maximum increase that is happening today is we're going from 0 to 3 million, and it's not that because currently the fees are not 0. So I guess all we can do is approve this, know that it's going out to public consultation, and by then maybe the staff will be able to give us the line-to-line total fees, not just per item fee.
yeah, I think Gary's right, that they must have those figures, otherwise they wouldn't be able to add up the total.
Yeah.
So, but we can't do it now.
Okay. Councillor Paula, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just a couple of quick areas, because some of these have actually changed in the process. We did see them, but some of them have changed. Can I just ask us some, I'll try and keep the questions broad, not drop down too much, but I'm looking at page 127, and there's the discontinued fees for various community facilities, with the note, the comment saying expect to discontinue all community fees from July the 1st, 2018. The intention is that the community halls will all have a community occupancy lease. I just apologise, maybe I overlooked it, but I don't remember that particular aspect being discussed. Was it? Was it discussed? It may have
It's a
been.
resolution of council to go an EOI process to contract out the management of these facilities, which we've been through. Report still needs to come back on that. If council decides not to go down that avenue, then the fees and charges on the left-hand side of the table, we're suggesting they would remain the same.
Okay, so it's just a proposal at the moment. I missed the connection between the leases and the discontinued fees. That
Yeah,
was all.
I'm sorry, it's a bit confusing. It's sort of, the LTP sort of crossed over that process, so
Okay, so I was right to have missed it.
yeah,
in
it would have
some
been
ways.
good to finish that process before and report it back before we go through the LTP.
Okay, so the key take-home point from that is that if we don't go to complete community leases, those fees would be reinstated in this budget. Thank you. Hamilton Gardens, I'm just interested in why. Oh, certainly. Page 131. Meeting room commercial use at the top. There's a bunch of them that are in the minus that's gone down. I just wondered the rationale for reducing those.
The size of the room has decreased through reconfiguration of the building.
Thank you, that reminds me. And the Victorian flower garden greenhouse has gone up 108%. I can't remember noticing that last time. Why was that? Was that there?
Yes, it was. We have significant demand for that, and we think that looking at what we charge, and we have a lot of corporates using that area, that we believe the market can stand that. And you'll see in the operating budget for the community group that increasing the revenue in some areas was to help offset other increasing operational and maintenance costs.
Okay. And the zoo, Hamilton Zoo charges are all looking to go down. Is that because we're not doing anything out there? Well, no, it's tongue in cheek, sorry. Why is that?
No, the individual charges going up. There's a proposal for that, but we've looked at the group admissions so that they go down. We believe by doing that, then that will encourage volume. Despite them going down, we believe volume increase will actually increase revenue. So individual charges up, really encouraging people to get the concession or the yearly membership, or to go for family passes.
Cool, thank you. I think there's just one more. No, I'm going to make some comments in debate, if that's okay, but that's fine. Thank you.
Just to illustrate my question, swimming fees have taken an increase. Non-notified land consents are decreased by 35%. The zoo fee's gone up. What methods have we used to increase and decrease? Has that been applied over the board, or have we just sort of stuck our finger up in the air and tested the wind on some of these things? Where's the methodology behind this? I don't know who I'm directing that to, Richard.
So I'll ask for Stephen to jump in if I get this correct. You've been coordinating this. So basically each area has reviewed their fees and charges. So the base premise is of inflation adjustment. However, each group's gone through and tested it based on the cost of running the service, the comparable price for other equivalent or seemingly equivalent activities, and tested it with other parts of the country as well. And so at best we've tried to do is reflect market and then any other adjustments on top of that. So there's not one blanket methodology across everything, but there's methodologies in each area to ensure there's some form of robustness in terms of the fees.
So there's nothing for me to be concerned about then on page 137, where it says non-notified land consent applications, a controlled activity, who is getting a 35% decrease. There's no concern there in terms of growth pays for growth?
So we need to ask specifically the GM on that. On that one.
No, it's not, because it's not growth related. That's a permitting cost to get the and the rationale is if it's non-notified, you don't need to work through that process, then the cost should be coming down because it should be part of the, under the new operative district plan, there are some things that are now more things we don't have to charge that amount for. So, but it's not related to a growth cost, it's related to the processing cost.
So that's the fact that the costs are lower, therefore the fees lower.
Yeah, correct.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Councillor David.
2 points. One follows Paula's query about the community facilities. I would have thought, regardless of whether we lease, we've got a lease arrangement from the expression of interest, we're still going to want to approve the start-off fees or even include them in an agreement with the party. We do that in some other areas, and so it's just a matter of, I think, in March or whenever they should be back in there, so that we say this are the fees now, and we expect you to stay within 5% or 10% of them for the X period of time or whatever it is like that. So I just think we should state that.
Yeah, so what we were proposing, Councillor Dave, was when we bring back those agreements with those organisations that might manage those facilities, is that would be part of the lease agreement, just so that we're very clear on council having some influence on those. So that was a proposal to bring those back as part of that. But if we want to reflect it in fees and charges in here, we can actually do that.
Yeah, well, I think we could do that after the discussion round, because surely it would be good to present to the new lessees, if there are going to be any, this is what the public has agreed with as the fee at the moment.
Yeah, and what's fair and reasonable, and we don't want fees going up 1,000% or anything like that. So yeah, take your point. Yeah.
The other one actually was in the building control area on page 121. I just looked at the fees for minor works, install a window or a door, and we've got going 350 to 360. And I'm thinking about the comments that probably most of us have had about how ridiculous it is to have to spend that, or 1,200 to put a sort of a shade house on the side of your house, or things like that. All of the costs that we have there. I'm a bit like Angela. I don't know who I'm directing this to. Maybe Kelvin. Oh, Kelvin. Okay.
Please direct those questions to Kelvin.
All right. Thank you. If we want to make it easy for people and less bureaucracy, and to a lot of people the cost is part of the bureaucracy, why would we be charging 350 or 360 to stick in a damn window? Why don't we say it's a $100 flat fee for anything less than 5,000 value or something like that? I mean, I would say that these fees seem to have grown like topsy all by themselves in some of these areas.
Yep, no, and that's a fair question. I think it probably relates to when we get to the operating costs, you'll see an increase in our staffing costs, particularly in the building unit because of inspections, which are related to the building code regulations for us to actually have to go and do the inspection of that work. So there is a correlation between what we have to do, and then I guess what you're asking is that though the fair cost of our time and staff to recoup that time?
So someone puts a window in the side of their house, or it fits a door, we have to go and inspect that?
Yep. For minor works.
If it's structural.
If it's structural, yes.
Well, it doesn't say that here. It says including install window or door.
No, I understand that the query, but it is part of the legislative requirement to go and inspect that.
Well, can I just add on this? One of the things we have been engaging with central government, including meeting with MB, we've challenged them over some of the I'd call pointless aspects of the Building Act that require us to do a level of work and seek a certain level of attestation in terms of the quality of the work when we don't believe they necessarily require that. So they're currently going through a process of reviewing their standards and what the regulations as well. So we're trying to drive a degree of pragmatism into the rules. We have no choice but to respond to the rules, but we're trying to get the rules changed. And if the rules do change, hopefully it drives the costs down.
And if I can, look, I don't necessarily disagree with you. It's the point to add to that. It's every time we want to try and do things faster, quicker, build more, there are additional regulations put in place that actually are against that whole objective. And then part of that is cost. So to recoup those costs, that's where we can. That's the cost associated. But I take your point. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just explaining where we've got to.
So someone putting in a window will probably double the cost, especially if they're doing it themselves. They're more than double the cost. Or a minor addition or alteration, $1,220. But that could be, changing the tiling on your in your toilet.
No, I mean, if it's structural in nature, but I think I guess probably what I haven't explained is that it might seem overly costly to go do the inspection, but remember behind that whole regulation there is a whole bookkeeping, record keeping, audit requirement, and the reason that this council went through its IONS accreditation this year with no recommendations, which is the first in the country, was because we've got those systems in place, and all of those activities have to also cover some of those systems and record keeping and all the backup that's required through legislation. So it's not just the inspection, Councillor, I think I take your point on that. It's also all of the requirements to back up, all of the audit requirements, the training of the staff, and all of that as well, and we have to recover that in some way.
We used to have another general manager that talked about getting 100% compliance too in that area, but he's not here now. But,
stay on track.
I'm still here at the moment.
Stay on track with your comments, please.
Thank you. The whole, in that section between the two green things, the first 60% of it is all rats and mice for private households. The last bit, commercial, I have no problems with charging what it costs and a bit more, but if you're going to charge mums and dads for sticking in a window $350, then it's no wonder people think the Building Act and councils are an ass when they come up against that. So why don't we have a nominal fee? And
because, well, I mean, largely because the direction of council has been of the council table has been to recover costs on that basis. I mean, if we don't recover the cost to have those people and not just the people in the inspection, but all that other bookkeeping and all the other requirements that are there, it has to sit with the ratepayer. So I take your point, Dave, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just explaining to where it sits now with the current direction of council. If council wished to make that be a nominal fee, then we would have to roll that out as such, and it would be included within the rates bill.
Well, I think you need to look at the list of actual costs for what they're doing. Making a outbuilding habitable is what's that? $2,200. I bet you that'd be more than it would cost to do that. Yep. Do the work with people doing it themselves, and that's why people don't get permits.
Understand.
And it's why people are aggravated with us, all the mums and dads around the place. No, I'm asking what our rationale is. We set up a whole $700,000 REAP exercise I could have reaped as much money saved in here by doing that without any, it just doesn't make sense, some of the charges we've got here. So I'm asking, the justification seems to be that the Building Act requires it, but I'm not sure that the Building Act actually means to require that we record every window that's changed in a house or every door that's changed.
Councillor Garrett?
Would it perhaps ease Dave's concerns that I think, Kelvin, all of these things, you're only allowed to recover our costs, and that gets audited, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That's the audit that I was talking about that gets us.
So there is a third party checking our costs, and you can argue that it's still excessive and.
Pay for that third party?
Yep. No, we.
Yeah, but
we
I
have to
mean,
pay
there
for that.
is
Yep,
some degree of third party checking on the thing.
There is, and that was my point before. It was less about the 100% compliance, but the fact that you've actually got that IONS accreditation requirement, again, through government, because if you don't have
Sorry,
that...
did you say that? I didn't hear you say this.
But if you don't have that, then we aren't able to do building control, and effectively we're done and dusted.
Okay, so we can turn to page 8. E, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any debate? Councillor Paula.
You'll probably be pleased to know that, tempted as I am to vote against it, I won't, because I don't think you vote against something just because there's a few aspects that don't sit well. But let me just please have on record the items that don't sit quite so well with me, and I'm hoping we'll get some public feedback about and take notice of. The increases for the Waterworld pool. I'll find the page now. Okay. Just noting that the fees increase for disabled and hydrotherapy. One's gone up 33.3%. The other one's gone up 15.4%. We've also gone 33.3% on children who surely need to learn to swim. So I'm really concerned about those figures. I know that those are portions of our community that tend to have less disposable money, especially those using the hydrotherapy are senior citizens and those with disabilities. They don't have a lot of money. So that does concern me. And may I also mention that when I added up what it would be like for a single parent with a number of children to go to the pools or to the zoo, it wasn't very competitive with the group rate that a family with 2 adults and 4 children get. So there's a little bit, that should be adjusted to take note of that there are lots of single parent families in Hamilton, and proportionally they should have a good deal. So I'll just raise those things, and I'm sure the public will respond in submissions, but in no way do I support those aspects of the fees and service charges.
Sorry, welcome, Simon. Okay, back to you, David.
Thank you, Chair. So again, on page...
No, hang on. They'll guide us.
Yep, so on page, you're right, Councillor Mallett, on page 8, if we have a look at the next step in the process that Sean's laid out, it's around the draft operating budget. Just remind you that page number 8, so the operating budget starts on page 48. So the discussion on F and any approval is excluding the consequences of other decisions at this meeting, like we talked about right at the start. So this is just about working through the process.
Just a process question on that. I mean, this is page 48 onwards. Are we just doing, how are you going to take questions and debate? Because there's sort of the summary to the note and the financial notes to the forecast on page 51, which is the overall new operating budget, but then sitting in behind all of that in further pages are the actual proposals that are included. So how are you going to manage us through this?
The thinking was that Yes, you're right. The preamble is starting on page 40, what did we say?
48?
48.
Yeah.
Behind that, the significant cost increases are separated into different groups within council, and the thinking was that each GM responsible for that group would respond to questions, and those individual groups add up to the sum total.
Some of those have further papers behind them in terms of proposals, and some, like for example,
Yeah.
what'd you say? Yeah, so for example, personnel. So how?
So you're talking about the council minimum wage proposal?
No, where's that one, Mark? Oh, on page 53. So there's a note there, note 8, personnel costs, variance 6.5 million or an increase of 9%.
Sorry.
But then there's actual a fully detailed paper that's sitting in further. So where are we taking
So
questions?
what we've done
How you doing
in that
that?
example is that the personnel is split down into different groups, and each GM has an explanation for their personnel cost increases, and all of the GMs that will respond to this will cover the total amount of the increase.
Okay, so I guess my point is then that because there is some detail further into the agenda for these, if we're going to work on the early pages,
Yeah.
you're going to have to bear with, I won't speak for everyone else, but certainly bear with me because I have questions in
Sure.
the detailed proposal as well as questions on those pages.
Sure.
So we'll have to be
Which is
flicking
kind of
backwards and forwards a little.
Which is kind of why we're talking about in terms of the recommendation to
Yeah, okay.
to try and help us manage our way through the process.
All right.
Okay,
So I suppose
questions,
if
Rob?
there's any questions,
Signaling an amendment to that motion that you've just put up.
Can we, yeah, can we have...
Clear.
Yes.
So another example, so on page 91 is the reduction in the Arts Post Sales Commission. There's information in there and there's a whole lot of those proposals. So we're not going to deal with those individually. You're going to deal with them through the, basically the pages after after 51, aren't you? With the, you're going to deal with it that way? Is that?
where's Sean? I'm just trying to align with what he's previously said we would
Yeah.
do. Do you want to grab him?
So,
So-
I guess the question is, how are you going to deal with? Never mind. Don't worry. I'm obviously on my own with this concern. No? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
These ones.
I'm not being clear, I guess,
That are in
on.
section
I
two.
think, can I try and respond? And, well, okay, you respond first, Sean. If I don't disagree with you, I'll correct you.
So what we're doing now is just the operating budget, not considering any of the proposals. All of the proposals that are currently listed under N, we will take together as we, and any new proposals will also be considered at that time. So if there's, and those proposals listed under N include revenue options around going straight to capital value, changing DC policy, etc. And so if there's just seeing the kind of the heading of what's proposed up there, that would also be something which could be taken at that time with those other proposals. So after we've considered the operating budget, excluding any proposals, any rates increase, anything else. So basically, the operating cost to run the city. Then we're talking about renewals and compliance. Then we're talking about growth. And then we're talking about all the other proposals to the budget.
So give me some pages. Sorry to be a pain here, but give me some pages of where the questions and the debates are focused. From page what to what?
Yep, sorry. So the proposals are in two sections at the moment. So pages, excuse me. So from page 86, what we have deemed operating budget proposals, through to, and that goes through to page 119. So that includes, starts with reimagining local government, then Arts Post Sales Commission, Council Minimum Wage, Arts Post Commission, digitising city news.
So that's what I said originally.
Okay, yep, so all of those proposals, that's the
They
page
are.
reference for those proposals?
They are, so we are dealing with those first lots of proposals then?
No, we're not.
That's what I'm asking.
So so the pages of what we're dealing with now are from 48
Yep.
through to 85.
You just said 119.
Oh, sorry, I was referring to the proposals which we're dealing with later. I thought that was the question. I apologise.
Okay. All right.
The operating budget includes this, so when explaining variances, some of the variances...
Okay, so we need a seconder for your amendment?
Oh, sorry, yes, that's me.
Okay. So can you explain your amendment, please, and then we'll need...
So you want my reasons for the amendment?
No, just explain
Oh,
the
yeah, okay.
amendment, and then we'll need staff to tell us from a staff effect the effect that'll have.
Okay, the amendment is to include under F, in addition to what is already there, a targeted rate of, and I've calculated that at $140 plus GST per rateable property. You'll see that I based it on 57,378 ratepayers in order to raise $8 million. And that $8 million is the amount that is currently to fund community assets as listed in the draft long-term plan. So it may change if the level of expenditure changes. And the intent is that any rate increase contemplated over and above the present 3.8%, which is in the existing long-term plan, would be adjusted to reflect the targeted rate so agreed. So in other words, I'm not looking for an increase in the rates beyond the 15.5%. The 15.5% would be adjusted downwards to reflect the fact that there could be, if that is the figure that we land on, that we would collect $8 million specifically in a targeted rate for funding new community assets.
What's the process here, Mr Chair? Simply, that's not an amendment to the whole of your motion, is it? That's an addition, that like pulls a chunk out?
Or just,
Well, it could amend the existing motion, but
Just cuts the pizza up differently, doesn't it?
let's get advice from the staff first.
So firstly, I think personally this should be a item that's best discussed at the back end once we've done everything, because it's effectively a rates related question, and it's in effect, and by the reference to the last point there in terms of any other rates increase contemplated above the 3.8% to be adjusted to reflect that change, it's about, you're trying to be flexible, I get that, Councillor Pascoe, but it relates to that whole rating approach.
I agree it's debatable where I should include it, but I felt that I probably needed to include it under F because of the uncertainty as to where we are specifically elsewhere in these papers going to vote for a rate, a
Okay.
change from the 3.8 to whatever. It's 15.5 at the moment. So I'm still uncertain as to where, at what point, we will be we will be debating and voting a change from the 3.8, which is the current figure in the existing long-term
Yep,
plan.
I can clarify that, but I'll let Sean have a go.
Yep.
So just to be clear, that the rate increase is something that is in recommendation O in the report. So
Sorry, I missed that.
Recommendation O in the report.
Okay.
That is where we would consider the rates increase.
Hang on,
So
can
we
I
have
just have a look at that, please? So that's...
What page is that?
okay, that's page 13. Approves the draft.
So in that table, it's got I think the bottom row there talks about the rates increase. So we have tried to tried to be clear that when we're talking about the operating budget that we're currently talking about, we are not talking about the rates increase. We are talking about the everyday costs. We've tried to amend the recommendation from the report based on our earlier conversation to be explicit about that. So if we're able to just scroll up on the screen a little bit. We have amended that to read, approves the draft operating budget for the 10-year plan, excluding any rates increase and subject to any decisions or other recommendations in this report which may materially impact this resolution. That was the intent of the recommendation as it was written, but based on your earlier point, we've tried to be explicit that in considering this operating budget component now, we are not talking about rates. So,
okay, well, if you're happy that O is a better home for my amendment, then I'm happy to move it over there. I was just a little bit sceptical that if I didn't bring it into F, because F has now been rewritten, it didn't have about the rate increase in there originally.
No, it didn't. So we've tried to be
so
explicit.
look, if you're comfortable that O is the right home for it, then I'm happy to hold over that amendment as long as it stays in line where it is. Happy to hold it over until we get on to O.
Councillor Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I've got a question back in operating and maintenance in relation to the minimum wage.
Which page?
That's referred on page 53, it's referred to, and then also page 88. This is okay. So it's 500k a year over 10 years, isn't it? So it's 5 million.
That's correct.
There, and it talks about the fact that if the wage is approved, further analysis on the cost impacts of retaining role relativity will be required. Can you tell me a bit more about that? And over what sort of period are we going to have to come up with some new figures there?
Well, so firstly, I'm not going to be supporting initially role relativity. Part of the reason that this discussion generally falls down is it becomes bigger than Ben-Hur when you start talking about minimum wage and loosely the living wage concept. So originally this is for a minimum wage for those in the organisation that are currently earning below $20. So there's a range of employees. What relativity means is effectively that if you're a team leader's currently earning $20 and you've got a staff member earning $18, without relativity, you'll both be earning $20. Mm-hmm. So at first, I'm not recommending this move. Over time, our performance-based pays the relativity adjustment, and I'm not.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jeff. So you're saying that the guy that went from 18 will go to 20, the person who was at 20 who has more responsibility will stay on 20.
Yes. Yep. And that's otherwise the number's far more significant. So this is a start towards that program, and then we'll work through with our performance-based pay system to ensure that over time we get people into the range they should be in, over and above that.
Richard, do you not perceive that may cause some problems?
It will cause some problems. I acknowledge that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll come back to that because I might have a motion on that or an amendment or something. I just wanted to talk about the note 11 on page 54, the operation and maintenance variance, $10 million. I just want to make sure I've got this right. So this is page 54. So, sorry? Note 11, that's right. So this is $10 million over the 1 year, is that right? This is part of that. This is part of the 21 million or the 26 million.
That's correct.
Jump. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you? So, and now we're really talking about the chunky rate rise, the real substance of the 15.5 rate rise here, aren't we?
That's right.
Yeah. So what would be the implications of splitting something like this over 3 years? Can it be easily done?
So I think there's various components to that, so we should ask the relevant GM, because there's various components of the attempt. So Councillor Jeff, are you talking about spreading the work program to slowly ramp up that level of service over 3 years?
Yeah. So where I'm going at it, when I look at the various operating and maintenance costs here, a lot of them do tend to look a bit fixed. You know, like you've got things like interest expense variance, you've got depreciation, etc. But I'm seeing this one here, 10 million operating and maintenance variance, where there might, to me, there might be some movement in terms of ability to actually make a difference, to make some cuts or to make some changes there. And so I'm just trying to get a feel for a bit more about what's involved. There's 2 examples or 3 examples here, but I just want to know a bit more about it.
Yep, so the biggest contributor towards this is probably in Chris's area. And so Chris, you want to talk a little bit about the nature of the increased expenditure, but also address specifically Councillor Jeff's question about the impact if we were to roll into this over a 3-year period, please.
Yeah, look, I can talk from my group's perspective. So if you're looking at page 54, and which Councillor Taylor has highlighted, so that's across the business and operating and maintenance variance of $10 million. So if you go to page 68, because what you've then got following that is a breakdown of each of the groups and how they contribute to that $10 million. So if you go to my group, it's on page 68, and my contribution to that $10 million is $3.8 million. And you can see all of the items that make up that contribution of $3.8 million.
Yep.
If I take the very first item there, it's called colloquial lumpy items. So what's that? That's no, look, there was an organisational term that I just fitted with. So what that's intended to mean that our maintenance and operation is not always a flat line. Every now and then we get one bit of kit that needs special maintenance, which might need an increase in dollars. And what's driving that for me is painting a bridge. So we've got 3 bridges in 10 years that we need to paint to protect their integrity. The bridge in this case is the Victoria Bridge. So we've been monitoring that, and it was in year 4 of the last 10-year plan. It's come forward now into year 1. So our advice is that it is time to do that work, and that's $1 million. So I can't spread that particular item over 3 years. I need to do that. What council could ask is, you know, what are the implications of doing it in year 2 or year 3? We have looked at that, and it's our view that it's time and we need to do that bridge. You'll see elsewhere in the paper we've also got Claudelands Bridge and one other bridge to do in the 10-year period, one in year 8 and one in year 9, I think. So you need to go through each of the items and probably decide whether they could be spread over 3 years. But we've in my group, we've thought quite hard about that, and we have already sort of spread a lot of costs as much as we can over a long period of time. But these are the things that we think are quite critical to do in year 1, and I'm happy to talk, as the other group managers are, on any item within their particular group.
Thank you.
Councillor Inge.
Thank you. On page 52, and I'm speaking to, note 4 there, I'm speaking to, or my question's about the $6 million increase in DC revenue that we are forecasting, or actually, no, that we're budgeting on. In the past, we've taken a very conservative view for good reason of this, because historically we have been well under budget. I appreciate that we have gone through a growth period, but are we still taking a conservative approach based on trend data over the years, or are we significantly loading the budget up with something that we really may not achieve?
No, so the years you're talking about that were conservative nature were definitely in the down cycle. What we've done is we've been more, because in the last 3 years we've blown those DC budgets by a lot, in terms of collection money coming in, that is. So we've been undercooking our revenue from that. So we believe we're still being conservative, but we've been more reflective of what we believe the trends are and in line with what we are planning for in terms of the growth projections we've got. So we've got better data, we've got more reflective of the recent trends, but also in line with what we see coming forward in the pipeline as well.
So Calvin, is it more about what we are planning, or is it more about how we've actually performed in that budget line?
Well, it's both. It's both, because both of those are reflective of what we actually need to put into a budget.
Yeah. All right. On the A3 sheet on page 58, now I've scribbled all over this, so just bear with me. And I did actually mention to Richard, I did find it a little bit difficult, and certainly in previous LTPs, we've always had the current planned fourth year for the LTP budgets figures in there. I didn't actually find it helpful that we were comparing simply the budget last year, because we are going into a completely different plan. But there's a 72 million, I'm looking at under 2019, and interest revenue, other revenue and capital revenue comes to $72 million. We've put into the budget there. I'm assuming that is all growth related, because in year 4 of the current plan we only had 12 million there. That's a significant increase in our in those budget lines.
That's correct. That's in alignment with the current growth prediction.
So that's really all been driven by growth, isn't it? Because, I mean, it's investment revenue, capital revenue, etc.
That's right.
And a big part will be the increased growth program in relation to Peacock as well, which has a large roading program which will attract a NZTA subsidy at the 51%.
And then under expenses, I think I've got this right, but just to clarify, under operating, professional, property and administrative, because we've grouped even tracking our finances, we used to put everything in other, pretty much, and now we're projecting them out, which is, I mean, we're giving them single lines, which is better. But that's those figures add up to $21 million more than on the current LTP. That's the 15.5% expressed there, isn't it, in those expenses? Have I got that right?
Yes, there is some offset in terms of revenue, but for the most part, yes.
Okay, and just last question on this sheet, because under expenses again, under depreciation, that's up 6 million from last LTP year. Is that, and we haven't treated depreciation, well, we haven't applied depreciation, it's an ongoing conversation, well, with our renewals. We haven't done dollar for dollar in the past. I don't think we have.
No, we haven't.
No, thank you. So is that going to be, are you absolutely certain that depreciation, I mean, I know we're going to have revaluations, I think, next year or something, it's looming on us. So have you taken into account the possible looming of that revaluations, because it could hit us massively in terms of the depreciation line?
We've done the best that we can.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have done is a thorough review of our depreciation, and our I would say that this number here is conservative, and we've made sure that unlike in the last financial year when we were hit with revaluations, that we have enough in there to ensure we don't get shocked like we did before.
Yeah, okay, but it is a conservative approach, so we could be in for a nasty shock coming.
No, I mean conservative in the sense that I'm hoping that we won't be in for a nasty shock. So the number is a little on the higher side in the books, as opposed to lower side.
But that, just to be clear, that we've received from Burl the local government cost index for capital program, and so our depreciation reflects the robust data set in terms of where the projected valuations are going to head. So we've adjusted for that. So it's not like. And Dave wasn't implying this, but don't read that we just plucked a number out of the sky.
No.
We took our number and then we plucked a number out of Burl and attached it to it.
Yeah, my concern was actually, is that enough? Because if we've been caught in the past by significant reevaluations.
I do suggest it will be different in reality.
Yeah, yeah. Now, some guidance here on page 55. So we are going to be in this motion, wherever we are, in F or whatever.
F, yes.
Page 55, under point 23, going down the paper, all of those are going to be captured, aren't they?
Subject to a discussion on those.
Subject
proposals.
to individual proposals.
Correct, and we'll treat each one of those individually.
Okay.
And so if an outcome of a proposal was the council decided not to
subject to
support that proposal, then that would alter the outcome of this recommendation by that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I just have first of all, I want to have a question on the income side of things. We're talking about 15.5% rates increases. We've also been talking about a gap of about 20 million, 21 million. Am I right in those two things? Okay. The 15.5% rate increase is meant to address the roughly $20 million gap, is that right?
That's correct.
So when we say 15% rate increases, UACs, change to capital value, all of these remedies we're coming up with, these suggestions,
yes.
They all fit into that envelope of $20 million.
Correct.
So when someone says rates are going up by 15.5%, and there's a UAC of 100, I can't remember the
UAGC, yep.
Yeah, that's within the 15.5. Okay, so we're always working within an envelope of 20-ish million.
Yes, and also the 15.5% is an average rate.
I understand that. Yes, yeah. But okay, so there's a pie with 20 million bucks.
Yep.
And we can chisel it up a whole lot of different ways, but we're never talking about
more.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Just personnel costs and things like that. I see, and I understand what Richard's. Well, I understand exactly what he said. He's not going to do a relativity thing or a. Why do you think that? How can you get away with that? How can you get away with someone who's got twice as much responsibility earning the same as someone who's got no responsibility or less responsibility? I can see you're just giving yourself a great big problem coming up. Well, sorry, you're not doing it. Oh, sorry, you're not doing it, but
yeah, I mean. Ultimately, it's about moving towards fairer pay for all our staff. There are some members of our staff that are paid currently below $20 an hour. This is an attempt to try and introduce a degree of fair pay.
But is that related to their productivity and all that sort of stuff, or is it just some arbitrary? It's fair.
Yeah, so the proposal covers that aspect off, and there will need to be various discussions with staff and team leaders and other staff members that have greater responsibility. They'll be earning the same amount of money as well. But that's not what the proposal in front of us says about relativity. There are some work we'll have to do in the future. It may require some changes. It may cause some staff to be happy and other staff to be unhappy. But we need to make sure that the environment they're working in addresses some of that as well. It's not always about money for some people, and if that's going to come down to quibbling over money, it may well be that there's other aspects of the job that haven't been addressed. We have to work on that. But it is a challenge, and I'm not denying that.
So I'll be more blunt. I think we're stupid to think we can get away with it. I cannot conceive of a scenario where someone's working a hell of a lot more responsibility, more accountability, getting paid the same as someone who has less accountability, less responsibility.
I think individual.
I guess on
Question.
Yeah, this is really important.
You're going to get a chance to debate.
Yeah, and the question is, how can you address that? I think we are.
No, stop there. Your question is, how do you
think
address
you're
it?
being?
Hang on, you've asked your question.
Do you think you're being irresponsible?
I don't think I'm being irresponsible. I'm suggesting there's a significant management challenge ahead of us in terms of how we roll this out. And if this is approved by council, we will work with the unions, and we will work with team leaders, and we'll work with staff in terms of rolling it out effectively. I don't think anyone...
So my concern would be the guy, us around here, I suggest we know there's going to be a problem in 2 years' time or 15 months' time when this rolls in, because there's going to be all these disaffected supervisors who are suddenly realising there's no margin between them and the people they're supervising. This is just human nature. You don't have to be a genius to know this.
I mean, ultimately, this is from a central government point of view, not national government point, central government point of view, they're moving towards a higher minimum wage as well, and we're going to be tackling the same issue there as well. So there is going to be some aspects to this where we believe we need to reward those at the lower end of the pay scale, and there are some challenges, and we're working through how we best address those challenges. So, and there will be some disgruntled staff as a consequence, and we have to work through that.
Okay, so there's a level at which, because we can't put our prices, to the extent we charge for things, we can't put our prices up as a consequence of this. So does this mean that we may find some people simply are being paid more than they are worth? And I don't mean worth as a person, but the value they add to our community is less than the $20 an hour we're paying them.
That's debate, Gary.
Yeah,
That's debate.
No, it's a question.
It's your opinion.
No, it is not. I've said, do you think there's an issue that we'll have people who will simply price themselves out of a job? And this is something that all businesses are dealing with now,
Yep.
It's typically automation, which is suddenly a machine can do a job better and cheaper than a person, so the person goes. And we're not immune to that at all.
Gary, your question to the Chief
My question
Executive.
is, have you addressed this? Do you feel comfortable that
if it's approved today, we're going to spend a significant amount of time between now and 1 July working out how best to execute it, and part of that is the consideration you're putting on the table right now. We'll have an answer for you then. At the moment, we're just trying to make sure that we get the budget through. I don't have all the detail behind we're going to execute it, which is a comment that was made in the report. A lot of work needs to be done on it.
Yeah, because, I mean, the report's quite honest. It says we're not addressing relativities.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. It does concern me that it seems that, and my memory might be failing me, but you did a kind of a salary realignment 18 months ago or something, didn't you?
Yeah. We asked for additional funding to address those staff that were below where the market said they should be paid.
Okay, so we did it a year and a half ago. Then we've got a cost of living thing which keeps people up to date. So what was wrong with the last time you did it, plus the cost of living thing, which is significant, which is $1.5 million, I think.
A bit more than that, I think.
Cost of living is 1.5, and the minimum wage thing is $500,000. So why has this arisen now? Because didn't you say you addressed it 18 months ago?
Yep, so that was for...
And since then, cost of living should have kept everyone in line.
Yep, so we asked for half of the amount that was needed to address the relativity payments, so we only asked for half of that as part of the budget. The gap between where people were, what they're earning and what the market says they're earning was twice as much as the amount of money we asked for during the annual plan. Yeah. So that's the first part, so we're still working on that, and once we get people into the right zone, in general, the inflation movement gives us enough pull to address people and keep them in line with their roles. This is actually outside of that, this is an attempt to get those staff below a certain price point, not necessarily related to your point earlier, not necessarily related to what the market says they're worth, but say that there's a fair amount that someone should earn, and that's been set at $20 in this proposal.
Do you agree that we run, oh, you may or may not agree, but is there a risk that literally people will be being paid more than the value they're providing to the community?
I don't know. I don't think I can respond to that. Yeah. Sorry, what you're making a...
So if we've got a receptionist who's paid $100 an hour,
That's $20 an hour.
yeah, I know, but I'm trying to give you an example, reductio absurdum, so that you can collect the point. There is a level at which no one can get paid above. They make it to the value. Yeah.
I want your question.
I'm trying to explain the question. Okay, so there is a level at which someone's pay is greater than the value they're providing. And everyone has a level.
I think there's a risk for that, and I think as we work through the model for this, we'll have more information behind it.
Yeah, but once this is done, you can't go back. You can't go back. Sorry, we made a mistake. We're taking you back down to 17.
No, but we're working on how to best execute this, and what the argument behind, I'm going to use the living wage, is not what this is. What the argument behind the living wage is, there's an aspect where even at the minimum wage, that most people that are on the minimum wage are actually being paid less than the value they're delivering. So there's a point where this is writing that up as well. And so when we're doing the work on this, that'll be validated. So at the point in time, the information we have in the report is a proposal for a funding allocation, and that's the detail that we have. So I don't have all the answers, sorry, Gary, to all your in-depth questions. They're not bad questions, I just don't have an answer for all of them.
Okay.
Chair, just a matter of process on this. Are we not going to debate and discuss this under Section 2, Attachment 4, which is part of N? So are we not sort of wasting our time duplicating the discussion now, when in fact it is one of the proposals under N, and there will be questions for and debate to when we actually get to that part of the plan?
Of course it affects the operating budget.
But so does everything that's in...
With respect, Mayor, may I answer that?
Yes, please.
Yes, that is correct. So when we come to the minimum wage proposal, we will discuss that. So in approving the operating budget as it is, we are approving it subject to any of those decisions we make on those proposals further down the track.
But hang on, this is under Note 8,
yep,
which covers balance of $4.5 million, personal cost, stability, blah, blah, blah. This thing, so it's more than just the minimum wage. It's the general concept of what we're paying people. And also the issue that I don't know of many businesses that have put their wages up 9% this year. The current year, when I think our wages are going up 6.5%. Do you think we are controlling our payroll costs adequately?
So just go back to the previous point. Again, recommendation F enables us to go and debate each one of these proposals separately and alter that recommendation. That's not to take away from any point that you're making, Councillor Gary. The 9% doesn't only include staff price increases, it includes new staff. So new staff that we're recommending come into council to address some of the topics that we've got around returning to sustainable levels and also dealing with those regulatory and compliance-based issues.
I guess my question is that our payroll costs have not ever gone down. Our payroll costs have always gone up greater than 3.8% rate increases, greater than inflation, since I've been on here, since 4 years ago. So, and I'm not sure that we're delivering any better value to our consumers, to our ratepayers and residents than we were.
Gary, what's your question?
So have we got control of our payroll costs? I mean, it seems to we seem
no,
because...
No, just your question, Gary.
Yeah, my question, because we are not... we don't have customers, we have captives.
No, Gary, I just want your question.
Yeah, because we have customers, not captives. Is this the only way this is the only thing that... Sorry. Because we are not subject to the normal market things where our customers can go to another business...
I understand the question.
Yeah. So we're pretty, yeah, okay, go on. Because of
Yeah.
our monopoly status, that's the only reason we can do this.
I think that you've been asked the question 3 times.
Yeah.
So firstly, we do have control of our payroll costs. Every time we bring a 10-year plan forward or an annual plan forward, we have our salary increase for existing staff mark to market in terms of a wage rate increase based on bill. So that's what the increase is. We have had increased headcount, which is the point that David raised, which has largely driven the increase over and above inflation. In some cases, those increases have been offset in other ways. For example, some of the increase in personnel costs were actually capitalised against the project because they're legitimate project-related costs. They form part of the asset, still a cost, but sitting in a different part of the balance sheet. And some of it represents revenue we've collected in other areas. For example, as the city's grown, we've had to recruit more resource consent staff and more building inspectors as well. The other challenge is that we take the payroll costs extremely seriously. It's one of the areas that we focus on quite strongly as a senior leadership team. We've had various freezes on at various stages in terms of payroll to manage it. Not necessarily to manage it below budget, but to actually manage it so I'm going over budget, but deliver under budget. We've always had a stretch in terms of the total cost of the budget added up as X, and the budget that gets approved in the annual plan is Y. There's always a gap, and generally we do that through achieve that through managing our payroll numbers, and that may well be through delays on recruitment, stretching projects out in terms of delaying projects, and effectively rather than having 3 people employed at once, take it over one person doing it over 3 times as long, and so forth. So it's actually an area that we actively manage. Most of the incremental staff that we've hired, like in last year's, related to probably internally focused functions in terms of regulatory and compliance related stuff. Some of them were externally funded, focused, and council signed those off. For example, the additional headcount at the zoo. That wasn't entirely about levels of service to the community or the customer, but it was about making sure that we had in place robust systems and to ensure that health and safety issues were addressed as well. So in short, yes, we have good control over our payroll costs.
Okay. That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Now, just if I do start to get stray into the things that are coming in the proposals, let me know and I'll hold them over. But just a general question in the executive summary on page 48 and around the finish of 6 years of austerity budgets. And we note in the second sentences that sometimes in the consequence of service levels reductions is that it's now more costly to fund the proposed service. So there again, I need some comfort wherever it comes, Mayor Andrew, whenever that should come through staff reports, that we are now not in the situation, because it does say we still remain lean, but we're not in the situation that we're a stitch in time saves 9 kind of thing all over again. In other words, that we're doing adequate to make sure that in another 3 years, when a new council comes in, they're not faced with unexpected maintenance and renewals, projects that have been too lean.
That's a question you need to be directing here.
Okay, that's fine. Wherever.
Hello, Councillor Paula. I can give you assurance I think I've mentioned before, we're far more robust in terms of asset management planning. We've been far more robust in terms of understanding all aspects of our assets. And Mayor Andrew asked us when he completed this budget to put forward the financials that will address the replacements and reflect the maintenance to an optimal standard, not gold-plated, but the optimal standard to ensure we get the maximum return out of our investment in those assets. And that's one of the reasons, for example, some of the operation and maintenance costs that come back in Chris's area, in the waters, for example, whereby we've probably cut short our level of maintenance in the past, which has had detrimental impact on our network in the case of during floods and emergencies and so forth. So there has been a direct response to some of those concerns previously. Whether we've got 100% right, well, we've got 100% confidence that our estimates are right, but they're still estimates. But there's nothing been cut out or hidden. It's all there as best we know.
So you've got fair confidence in the asset management plans, for example?
Great. Improving confidence in asset management plans. They could always improve more, as we've reported to council, but this is the most robustly based 10-year plan that we've done in the last 3 rounds of 10-year plans.
Question on page 55, because I'm not sure where I discussed this, is the proposals that are all listed at the top. Some of the proposals are in that 10-year savings thing, the arts post, the digitising the news, closing of eyesight. But then there's this one, do not renew grant to Gallagher Performing Arts Academy. Now when, where, what when do I ask my questions about that, and where do I get the chance to debate that item? Now? No? Thank
Now.
you. And then I do have another couple of short questions afterwards, sorry, but... Yep, so could someone explain to me where that decision... Because I didn't see it until yesterday, day before yesterday when I was reading this. And the university assured me this morning they also did not know about that, so...
Could I just address that? The university was informed, so I can confirm the university was confirmed last week about that.
Last week?
Yep.
Okay, so well, we didn't know, but anyway, why, and why?
This council had discussed this several times, this training in the last year. Every time it came up, there was concern about this around this table. So that was noted by myself and included in the budget. And hang on, we're not taking anything off them. We're just, the contract finish, well, I'll hand it over to, the contract finished. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I know we had some very loose, high-level conversation, and I heard some niggles around that, but I don't recall ever having a robust conversation about the costs or benefits of remaining in a relationship with the university over Performing Arts Academy. I know that some people were unhappy with some of the community use, but when did we have that strategic conversation about whether we're to be involved with this or not?
Well, isn't it around the other way? We signed up on a 20-year lease, a 20-year agreement, and that agreement has finished.
Well, then I would like to move that council is given the chance to debate their continuing relationship with the Gallagher Performing Arts Academy, wherever that should come, but before the draft, before we make a black and white decision on it, because I haven't made my mind up on it.
What staff member is best to advise when it's best to bring that in? And at what stage to bring
It's on page 72 under the community group operational budget. There's 3 paragraphs there.
And this is the trouble with the flicking back and forward bit as well.
And so to, if I can answer the Mayor's question, so if an elected member did want to put forward a proposal to fund this going forward, then the appropriate time would be when we are considering the other proposals. So I think I sort of put you slightly wrong. This is the right time to ask the questions about it because it's not the subject of a proposal currently.
Okay.
It's noted in I guess the BAU operating budget.
So if you're putting up a mental whiteboard or a physical whiteboard about this, can you please do that so that I can come to that in the proposals?
Yeah, we'll put it up on the actual whiteboard.
Oh, there is an actual whiteboard.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think Richard's got the pen there, hasn't he?
Just a couple of other really quick, short questions. The decision we're just about to make, is that also encapsulate the 100% move to capital value street?
That's the subject of a proposal.
That's a proposal.
Yep.
Thank you. Also, in terms of the parking and getting feedback on how that trial's working, does it involve? Are we locking ourselves in there? Look, I'm just eager to hear how it's working.
So there's no proposal around the parking. There's an assumption. I think there's someone will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's the assumption is that the free parking in the CBD continues. So that has been.
Well, that's what I mean. There's an assumption. So when do we get the?
It's not an assumption. It's actually a council decision that it continues till June.
Yes, June. But the new, with all due respect, if I may finish, then the LTP won't be in place much before that. So I'm interested in when do we get the final report? The assumption, we're carrying that assumption forward as if it's actually a fact rather than a potentially. We'll get the report, it'll look all good, and we'll continue it. Yeah.
So Chris might be able to answer when that trial is due to complete and...
Yeah, from recollection, I think Councillor Taylor's right. I think the council resolution was to report back by June next year. So we'll do that progressively, and I think our first substantive report will be in February to growth and infrastructure. And also the other discussion's correct too. We've built an assumption into this 10-year plan that the trial will continue through into the next year. So we've been conservative and built that into the assumptions.
Yep, so the assumption should be tempered by the fact that we will be having a review. That's all shouldn't it? Shouldn't it? Rather than it being automatic, it should be tempered by the fact that potentially, once we get the end of the project review, it might go a different way, it might not.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'd like that wording considered, just so that you know. And the last thing, if that's fine, we sadly, because there was so much on with the LTP, I couldn't make it to the hearings for the local water shared services that happened in Te Awamutu. So we haven't, I've read a bit of press release and what have you about it and seen a little bit of information, but I'm wondering when will that feed in, what came out of that, because potentially, not as much as an asset-owning CCO, but potentially it could save us quite some money, and where does that get reflected in here? Not talking about metering, by the way, it's completely irrelevant in this debate.
So that decision is subject to decisions by this council next week and Waipa the week after. I had a meeting today with Waipa staff and the auditors for both ourselves and Waipa as to how it would be treated in the consultation document and the LTP. There's a degree of uncertainty around certain things that need to be sorted out as part of the process. So if the resolutions go through as we intend them, as they're drafted at the stage, there's still uncertainty. So like we've done in the past with regard to the water CCO, we'll make some comments in the assumptions, but because of the uncertainty, it's at this stage it's too difficult to book anything of any specifics. The size of the size of the shared waters management company isn't material in terms of our balance sheet and our P&L. So
the assumption that just sits in here for now, pending that decision, is business as usual with them.
And it might be in June that some decisions are made that allow us to make some final adjustments.
So that would come in when we're considering the final LTP.
If there's new information.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's all about timing and trying to get these things to line up, so thank you.
Councillor, yeah.
I noticed Paula's got a list or something on the thing there. I mean, I've got a ton of things that I would like to put up there. Is that the way we're going to go about it?
I've just been told by the governance team that they're maintaining a virtual list, pretty much.
Good on. Excellent.
No, sorry, you might have... Perhaps I wasn't entirely clear. CE. We have moved Councillor Pesco's motion amendment because it was a formal thing to the appropriate part of the section. I did think the whiteboard was the intended place to capture some of these things.
So this is more about making sure that we remind the staff to pick up that conversation and the proposals, which it's bound to be. But
so that's up there because presumably Paula would like that voted on, is that right?
No, I would like to raise it for discussion at the appropriate time
And of course, following that discussion, you'd like a vote on it?
Well, potentially.
Of course you do. So all of us will have a list of things to put up there.
Well,
when would be the time to put those things up on the list?
What? This is just
like minimum wage and the performing arts, a whole lot of things. So
Do the minimum wage, so Gary, that's already on.
because we haven't got to that part of the paper
and
yet.
so too is the performing arts thing. That's a paragraph in here. It is there. It is there. Remove draft.
Rub that off.
On the list, though. It's not on the list.
To get to it when you get to it.
Yeah.
It's just a parking lot of ideas.
I'm seeking any preference by it. I can write my
No,
own.
I'm not expecting. I don't care about your preference. I just
can
want to make
write it on
sure
my own post-it note and hopefully
if there are
take it over,
things
yeah.
that we're going to be discussing, where are we going to capture those? Well, I will. I'd be very happy to. I'll be there for half an hour.
When we get to that part of the paper, I'm sure you'll be onto it enough to realise that this is your opportunity to move your amendment. And I mean, go back to what we're discussing now, which is back on page 8, item F.
Yeah, but these things here, my understanding is all of these things are the things that make up this operational budget.
Excluding the consequences of other decisions at this meeting. The second, but I mean, you guys.
Yeah,
need to-
so I'll try to clarify. I think every time I sort of say something, it makes things slightly murkier, but...
Yeah, I was going to say that.
So I apologise in advance if that's the case again.
We go backwards every time you speak.
So the council minimum wage is already the subject of a proposal, so that will already come up later. The Gallagher Performing Arts doesn't have a proposal already attached to it. So the reason for capturing it was that if that or any other items are elected members are going to raise those during proposals, then we've captured those so that when we come to that item in and we've got the existing 18 proposals in front of us, that if there's another 2 or 3 or 10 items that we've captured those.
Just sorry to slow you down, but my understanding was that if something is in a paragraph in here, a decision has been made. Now that's the wrong way of saying it, but someone has overtly said we will not continue with the performing arts thing, subject to what we decide, or we will have a minimum wage, subject to what we decide. So how do you distinguish between the minimum wage, which happens to have been a positive recommendation, and the only difference between that and the Gallagher's thing is it was a negative recommendation, but it was an overt recommendation to take it out, or not to continue it.
Yep, so we're approving the draft budget subject to any subsequent decisions we make, proposals we make. So there's already 18 proposals on the table, which are in the report. So what we're doing
is one of those 18 proposals not that we shall not continue to, that's double negative, that we will not, isn't one of the recommendations you've made in here that we won't continue the funding of the Gallagher's Performing Arts?
No, so I'm saying that's not the subject of a specific proposal. We're noting that is being factored into the operating budget base, essentially. So what Paula is flagging is that she would like that, I think, without putting words in Paula's mouth, but she's flagging that she would actually like for that to be the subject of our discussion later, so that we can approve the draft operating budget, and then when we move into the proposals, that might be a subset. We might say, the decision of the council might be, actually, we agree that it's not included, and so then the operating budget doesn't change. If Paula, for example, put an option up that we continue to fund the Gallagher Performing Arts, then we would make an adjustment. It would be subject to a vote, and we'd make an adjustment to the operating budget to reflect that.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the purpose for capturing it on that one on the whiteboard, and not the minimum wage one.
Councillor Rob, you guys, if something comes up and it's not the right time, just tell us it's not the right time. We don't need 10-minute explanations about it's not the right time. Just tell us we're coming to that, okay? Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, mine will be a very quick question, and I'll get straight...
You guys are running this, you guys are basically running this process. Well, I'm just chairing from here, so keep it on track.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Rob.
Yeah, my question is, given that we have now accepted a financial strategy of balancing the books, is it possible to get page 58, which is this summary forecast operating result, restated using what is the new measure for balancing the books? And I ask that question because I know that there are some accounting gurus sitting around the room who might be able to churn that report out very quickly for us, so that we can at least get validation that what is being proposed in this budget will give us the confidence that from 2018 onwards, we will be each year balancing the books following a 15.5% increase in rates and a 3.8% thereafter.
So, Councillor Rob, if we go to the page that I'm struggling to find.
58? 58 is the,
Yeah.
I assume 58 is the IFRS accounts.
But if we go to the 27, page 27, the Mayor's
27, hang on.
proposal for the budget, the
27. I don't want to
The
look at,
financial
I don't want to
impacts.
look at graphs. I want to look at
No, I
some
under-
financial figures, please.
I understand that, but indicatively, using the
These-
balance in the books, that
These
is the
graphs
new-
are so small, they're very, very hard to read for an old grumpy man like me. So I would like to
You
see.
never used to be grumpy.
I've always been grumpy, Gary. I would like to see something like this, which validates, and I'm sure that, given that you've done the
Yeah, it can be
graphs,
produced.
it'll be fairly easy
Yeah,
to print
just to
that
put your
out.
mind at ease, though, you can see in terms
Yep.
of the first 2 years, it balances
Yeah,
the books.
I've
So
looked at those. and-
just there, can you get, somebody text one of your staff to get some big graphs made for Rob?
No, not
Okay.
the graphs. No, not.
You said you couldn't
I
read
want
them.
a set of financials like this to show me and validate to me that by adopting our new financial strategy, which we've already done, and by lifting the rates up and taking out the expenses that you presumably don't want in here, that we will have a budget that will show, using our balancing the books method, that we are actually living within our means.
Yeah, so Councillor Rob would like a tabular format which supports, with a bit of detail that supports underlined graphs. and
Same
stuff
as
like
this,
that.
same
Yep,
as this,
Yep,
yeah.
that's correct.
Yep.
Which isn't too much of a burden, I wouldn't think.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on and come to that when we get there. Thank you. Councillor Dove.
No, I'm all right now. I was going to debate Gary's questions.
Deputy
Some new
Mayor.
questions.
It's just a matter of, I think, we've obviously got the opportunity. I mean, obviously, around this table, I've got some stuff I want to visit, and I think it's like your the Gully program, Whaiwhakariki, which has dropped out, if you like. I understand about the Gallagher Performing Arts, because you're just saying we're not renewing and that can be debated. It's as long as we have the opportunity to plop those things, social housing, etc. So, and I just, forgive me, I'm just wanting to know if we do need to have the list, to go around the table and the list of clarifications that members want to pick up.
Okay, so I'm going to move F, seconded by Deputy Mayor. We're going to have a break for 10 minutes straight after that for a cup of tea, and we're going to let staff get together during that cup of tea and just regather and give us some direction on when, just to regather and get some direction here. We've
Can I also say procedurally, into the proposals under N, we actually will need to take those numerically, because in terms of standing orders, if you take it as one whole motion, members will be prevented from moving amendments because they're prevented from moving a second amendment. And the City Governance Manager might advise.
Deputy Mayor, your point is well made, and Sean endeavoured to cover that off earlier this morning when he explained how he thought we might progress through it. So perhaps at the point we get to N, the General Manager could just perhaps refresh
Yeah,
everybody's
because I just want to
understanding
make
of
sure
how
people
he-
have opportunity to amend.
I
Yeah,
understand.
thank you.
yes.
okay. Is there
Mayor
any
Andrew,
debate?
Mayor Andrew, if, just, excuse me for interrupting, the recommendation F was modified slightly, so rather than
Could we have it on the board?
elected members looking in their paper, we can put that on the board so that everyone knows what F is now.
So while we're getting that up on the board, it's on the board. Okay, so Councillor Ange. No, we're on to debate. Go. Okay, is there anyone?
Of the resolution, not of the meaning of the resolution, not about this.
If it's a point of order, if it's a point of clarification.
Yeah. Okay, so approves the draft operating budget, but for the excluding, so effectively, we're just accepting what's in here. Is that right?
Yes. You're putting a stake in the ground, but it's also with the subject.
Yeah, we're making a starting point. We're saying
Yeah,
this is the
that's right.
starting point.
Yep. And this part here gives you the ability later on.
And so later on, so this is saying, yes, I agree to the 15.5% and the increase in wages and blah, 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 all of those things. But later on, in the next 2 or 3 days, there's going to be blood all over the floor and we're going to change things and all that sort of stuff.
So you're excluding any rates increases from this, and any other decisions you make later on will update this. It's just the basic starting point.
Okay, so this, and it only addresses the expenses then, does it?
Effectively, you've precluded development contributions because there's a separate paper on
You've
that
what,
one.
sorry?
Development contribution.
Excluded that from this?
That's right. You've effectively got fees and charges because you've already voted on
Which
that
we've
one.
done, which is fine.
Rates is excluded, so you're right. All it really leaves is your operating expenditure.
Is the expenditure side of things, okay.
That's correct. And, it's
Okay.
only the operating-
And we're going to address some, well, we're going to have a go at addressing some of those later on,
That's correct.
and, yeah, okay, all right.
And you can raise at any particular point throughout this, because of that exclusion statement at the bottom, subject to statement, you can raise an item that will then go back through a resolution and update this.
Okay. Can I just ask then, and I hope this doesn't sound wrong, but all we're doing is ticking Andrew's thing. Because we've asked a whole lot of questions about it, but we haven't changed anything yet, and that's going to be the debate in the next few days, is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Months. Yes. So effectively, all you're doing is endorsing the base budget pretty much, because I mean, ultimately, the base budget is last year's annual plan numbers adjusted for some of those key items about service level, maintenance, renewals, payroll increases and so forth.
Yeah.
And then ultimately that's what you're locking in, and everything else in terms of the rest of the report will plus and minus against that as you make decisions.
Of course, yeah, you say locking in, but of course,
And that's what
any decisions
subject
made
to, plus and minus along the way against that. And then when you get to the end of it all, we'll have a total cost base,
okay.
and we'll compare that
I
against...
just don't understand how that moves us any further forward than where we are.
It's not hugely moving us forward any further than
No,
where we
okay,
are.
all
But,
right.
yep, so if that's the question, no, it's not.
Okay.
It's just giving us some certainty that we've got a baseline when we're doing our modelling going forward that we know we can reference to.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in debate. Councillor Paula,
Question, follow on clarity too, no?
a clarity question, yeah.
Yeah, well, so what's the risk if we don't do it now and we hold it over until we've made all those decisions? Because as you say, there's very little left in it. But there are some things in here that we just haven't got time to go through individually. So what's the risk? What's the risk for... Because I'm inclined to vote
There's no
against.
risk. It's more an advantage of knowing what your base is, so that when we get to look at the proposals, and remember earlier on in the day when I talked about we could break and go into CR1 and have an attempt to do different financial strategy outcomes, that needs to be modelled based on a base. So
Well, we've got the recommendation and stuff. So do you need it formalised like this? That's what I'm saying. What's the risk?
Well, there's no disadvantage.
To be
But there's
honest, what we were trying to do is force a discussion, and if councillors wanted to make an amendment to it, it gave us a window to do it. So, for example, Councillor Jeff was talking about maintenance and so forth. The Councillor Jeff was so well inclined that he wanted to make a reflection, say, no, let's phase our maintenance uplift over 3 years. It gave a window to do that. So it was effectively forcing a point of conversation so that we can lock and load any base change to the base budget. And what we're saying now is after all that discussion and debate, let's just agree that's our starting point and move on. So that's what we're asking for, is agreement on the starting point. And it doesn't impact on your ability to make a decision later on down the track. If you don't make this agreement, we're going to assume you have anyway, because that's we're not going to change your model, and we're just going to get on with it and carry on.
So that was quite part of my question, because we've already approved the report as the basis. So in a way, it's a little bit mute, but isn't it? Anyway, doesn't matter. Thank you.
Councillor Ange.
So debate. Look, I'm not going to support the motion. I'm concerned with the process that we're following today, and I don't want to be forced, using the CEO's word, into a position of supporting 15.5% rates increase, subject to being able to take it out. Effectively, I would be voting for the base budget and then fighting to get things, either extra things in or extra things out. And I think that that's a disingenuous way to create a budget with public money. So I'm voting against this.
Councillor Henry.
Chair, look, I would love to support it. It just I'm slightly confused, or actually totally confused, with backwards and forwards. And but I'm grateful that one of the things, the alternative weed control method, is in there, and that's just exciting to me. So I'm still in two minds. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
I don't know.
I'm just
It's totally confused.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I'm going to vote against it, not as a matter of protest, just as a matter of process, if that makes any sense. You shouldn't read into it that I don't think the report as a base is the starting point for discussion. I certainly do believe that what we've got in here is the basis of the discussion, and what we've been going through from workshops is the basis of the discussion. There's just a few little items of detail that I'm still trying to get my head around. As Councillor Henry says, we're backwards and forwards across the papers. As you can see, I did my very best to codify my discussions yesterday, but it's actually not that easy. Look, don't read into it that at the end of the day I won't be able to reach a decision about a proper budget, but I'm just going to sit with that pending the later discussion. Thanks.
Are members comfortable, and you can say no to this, to the Chief Executive, just giving a summary of exactly what you're doing here and what you're voting for? Or do we just go to the vote? I'd rather go to the Chief Executive and let him explain what's happening here, because there's obviously some confusion in the room.
For point of order, I'm absolutely clear on what you're doing, and I respect that that's the way that you're chairing the meeting and you want to do it. My opinion simply is that I don't agree with it. I'm very clear on what you're trying to do. I'm not confused.
The Chief Executive's not allowed to talk unless everyone in this room agrees. Can we let him explain to the members who are confused or not? Or if you say no, I have to go to the vote.
No, that's not correct.
Well,
a member can ask a question for clarification through you as chair of a member of staff.
So I will,
Which I will when I get to
If it's all right with democracy, can I ask the Chief Executive to give us a helicopter view of what we're doing for those who are struggling?
I think, Chair, if you believe that in order to make an informed decision, further information is sought from the CE, then yes, you can make that call under standing orders.
Chief Executive, would you like to do that before we have a cup of tea, or would you rather wait till we have a cup of tea?
If I have the choice, I'd rather have a cup of tea first.
Okay, so we'll come back at... Yep. We'll, we're asking for a time extension till 8:30. Anyone? Moved by Mark, seconded by James. All those for time extension till 8 o'clock. All those for. Any against? Carried.
But this has never happened. We've never suspended debate halfway through before. Appreciate asking questions, that's fine, that's up to you, but this has never happened in 10 years that I've been here, that where we've had where we've just completely suspended debate. I need some advice on that.
As a chair, I'm not comfortable that we've got at least two members around this table who are confused and have said that...
Oh, no, sorry, Mayor Andrew, I'm not confused at all. And
You're not one of the two.
Well...
Just...
I just want some guidance from the governance manager. It's a very difficult question, but...
Technically, understanding orders that once we've entered into debate, we would conclude.
All right, so it's to the vote. All those for? I've just been told that I...
No, that's not what you were told. That's not what you were told, actually. You were told that once we start the debate, you can't end it. And you've got people on the speaking order, including at least one that wants to ask the CEO for an explanation because he's confused. Not him, me.
I've asked...
I am too.
All right, I've just had it clarified what the situation is, so Richard, you need to explain to us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so what we're trying to do as we go, we've been trying to move from, we've got in front of us Andrew's budget, and there's various components to Andrew's budget. We've been trying to work from the base information through from which is the non-discretionary stuff towards the discretionary stuff. So what that resolution should have said, Council approves the draft operating expenditure budget, would have probably been a little bit clearer so that there wasn't any inference around rates increase or otherwise. I think that's fair call, Rob, that does create that concern. So it should have said that, and it may well have addressed some of these concerns as we're going. The base budget has moved. At this point in time, I would have expected that we would have had a debate and answered questions as to why there has been an increase in costs over last year. And with the operational proposal as part of that discussion. So everything up to whatever the page number was, and we could have debated that. We haven't had too many questions, probably about 3 or 4 questions about why the costs have increased through a couple of councillors each. So at this point in time, if you accept this resolution, effectively you are locking in the base budget as part of our modelling. But with that subject to, it gives you a hugely wide berth to, at a later stage, subject to any proposal that's coming along or anything you wish to raise in addition to it, because if it's in here, you can raise a resolution or an amendment on it at any stage, you can make changes to that. So this just gives us a chock under the wheels to say we've satisfied one part of the discussion, locks and loads it, plants it to one side, we move with clarity onto the next part as well. It doesn't stop us in any way, shape or form coming back. It's not committing us to anything. And maybe if, with the leave of the Mayor, even though I know we're in debate, Governance Manager, but you can turn a slight sideways look, that we add the word operating expenditure budget in there, it might help satisfy even clearer the concerns that some of the councillors have raised. And that's where we're at, unless any one of my 3 at the front want to add anything to that. Good.
I could vote for that. So, Mayor Andrew, will you include the word expenditure?
I'm quite happy to do that, Brooke. Deputy Mayor.
I'm delighted to have the word. After a good cup of tea.
Okay, so we're moving on with debates. We have to finish debate now that we've started it. So, Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. I now fully understand what we're doing, which is great, and I approve this because it's either we start debating from a solid object or we start debate from an open blank piece of paper. What we've done here, this is the start. This is not where we end up. And we do have to, and Andrew is required by law to provide us with the starting point. That's what he's done, and we're approving that starting point. Then we go through, and as I said, there'll be blood on the floor, but we will come to, and Andrew in his own report acknowledged that where we started is not where we're going to end. But we do have to start somewhere, and this is just simply giving us a solid starting point. And relatively clear where we were starting, subject to all of the questions that have been answered today, which has been useful. So I will be supporting the motion.
Councillor Jeff.
Yep, it's been relatively useful in that for me there's probably a couple of things that I now know I will raise, such as the operating and maintenance variance of 10 million and whether or not that can be spread, and I'll be coming back with that, and a minimum wage discussion as well. To be honest, I'm not really comfortable actually voting for it. I similar to Councillor O'Leary, really, I'd sort of rather it just lay on the table, so I'm not going to vote for it at this stage because I'm uncomfortable, because there's almost an implicit suggestion there that at this stage I'm supportive of the 15.5 and I'm not. So that's just where I'm at, but it's no big deal, but I just won't be supporting it at this stage.
Excuse me.
I'm just not comfortable at this stage supporting it, because to me it's lying on the table, and that's fine. We'll come back to it.
Councillor Dave.
Look, I'm going to vote for it because we need a starting point. We actually need to start discussing the LTP, what we all regard as the meat that we came here to discuss. Under law, as Gary said, he's quite right, the Mayor's required to provide a starting point. I almost think we should have been there about 6 hours ago and got on with the debate, because we've been skirting around the edges. I don't see any problem with this. It explicitly doesn't include the rates increase, Jeff, or any rates increase. That's quite explicit. If it had been silent on that, I think there might have been more of a point. But because it actually explicitly excludes it, no one is locked into anything. But it gives us a base, or gives the staff more so than us, a basis on which they can add or subtract the items as we approve them.
Councillor Jones.
Yep, agree with what Dave said. We haven't been locked into anything by voting for this. I'm voting for it. Unlike some other members, I'm not confused. I've read all my documents, so I haven't been confused from the very start. Thank you.
Councillor Robb. Sorry, I didn't see you up.
First long-term plan, I'm taking a lot of guidance from staff and my more senior colleagues. In this, I'm comfortable that we can go back and attack it at any time. And I agree, we need a foot on the ground to fight this thing. So I take a different view to Councillor Taylor in this respect, but I also miss the sound of my own voice, so thank you.
Councillor Rob.
Look, I'm also going to vote for it now with the changes that are there. I think there's sufficient in subject to any decisions on other recommendations in this report to extend it right across the whole report, so it's not just the particular issues that are listed in here. I think there's enough in that motion now to go back and review Paula's wish on the Gallagher Performing Arts Centre, as well as anything else that's in the report but not tabled up as a recommendation. So I think where we've landed, we've got that the stake in the ground, as Gary's alluded to, that the Mayor has to do, and now we can move forward and work out where those variables are that each of us might have in terms of the rate increase and any of the other decisions within the report. So I'll be voting for it.
Okay, we'll go to the board. Okay, all those for, raise their hands and just hold them up, please.
The motion is carried.
Keep your hands up.
Yep. Do you want me to read the names out?
You've got them?
Yeah, so those for Mayor Andrew, Deputy Mayor Gallagher, Councillor Henry, Councillor Bunting, Councillors Casson, McPherson, Mallet, Pascoe and Tooman.
And those against?
Councillors Southgate, Taylor and O'Leary.
Okay, thank you. We'll stop until 5 past 5.